Good evening. You are all welcome. I'm Rutendos Gogo. I'll be driving this ship today. I should be with you throughout the whole program. Before I start with the program, allow me to recognize some of us who have joined us. We have got the Honorable Minister with us. I recognize him in that capacity. Of course, I should recognize Mpo, the chairperson of the organization in the province, Mpo and the team, the whole executive, assisted by his deputy, Tula. So you are all welcome. And I've seen as well that amongst others, we've got Dr. Zaga, we've got Dr. Mdau, our sponsor for tonight. I believe you are going to enjoy the program of today. I should remind you why we are here today. It was in March of this year when we all thought all was well, when the president of the country announced the state of disaster. And that is the day where everything changed and on how we were going to do our things in our country and of course globally, because we were then invaded by the invisible enemy throughout the globe. And in response to that, the president had to announce state of disaster. And with it, it has some effects, it has some implications, particularly on your rights, particularly on our rights, all of us. What happens to the right to education? We know people are supposed to go to school in order to teach our future generation. What happened to those who needed food the most, security to food? What happens to security to shelter? So many things happened when we were faced with this invisible enemy. So this is the reason why today we are going to be discussing this important topic. We will learn more from our guest speaker on many things that has happened. And we should also now know how to respond to these challenges that are facing us, particularly taking into account that this enemy is not here to leave us today. We might be having it for some time, and we don't know for how long. So with these few words, allow me to welcome Mr. Mpomtsai, Mtsei, the chairperson of the organization, Limpopo, to come and give us a word of welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge, for your words of remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, my task is very simple, but I would like to say good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our highly esteemed event this evening. We would like to extend a special welcome to our guest, Judge Lutendos Gogo, who is the immediate past president of the Black Lawyers Association and is our facilitator this evening. And we are honored to have you, sir. Dr. Takalani Zaga, who is the Director of Communication of the University of Venda. We are humbled by your presence, Doctor. Mrs. Tulamsindo Rapodu, our very own Deputy Chair Lady, we are welcomed, ma'am. Dr. John Mudau, the Chief Executive Officer of UIGC, which is our official sponsor for this evening. We could not have pulled this off without unwavering support. We welcome you, Doctor. Lastly, but definitely not least, we want to extend a very special welcome to our guest of honor, Honorable Minister Lamola Ronald, who will be addressing us later this evening. Words cannot begin to expatiate how grateful and honored we are to have you in this platform. And so we welcome you with open arms and heart, Minister. BMF Limpopo brings this event to each and every one of you in partnership with the University of Venda, sponsored by UIGC. The minister declared it an annual event when we hosted him last year at a gala dinner. We appreciate the fact that the minister sees value in continuing engagement between the government and the people and that he follows through on his word. Although we could not have a gala dinner due to the pandemic, the minister still set aside time to address us remotely, and we appreciate that. We are so excited to have you all here to participate in our second annual event with the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. Most importantly, we thank all of you again for joining us today to continue the discussion towards achieving a better South Africa for all. And I say for all, including women and children who do not feel safe in our country due to gender-based violence. I therefore plead with all of you, please let all do our part to keep them safe and protected. Lastly, I would want to say this event is live on BMF Limpopo Facebook. People are encouraged to please follow the page. And with this word, I would like to say, I thank you. Over to you again, Judge.
Thank you very much, Mpho. Thank you very much, Chairperson. As you have indicated, amongst us, we have Dr. Takan Zaga from the University of Venda. And as you indicated, he has partnered with us as the university with the BMF, and like they always are with us today or tonight, he's going to share with us the views of the university in respect of this partnership. And before he takes over, I should then indicate to you that from that university, which not so long ago was the youngest university in the country, there were some people who were produced from that university. And I'll tell you more about that when we proceed. Dr. Zaga, you can then talk to us.
Thank you so much, Program Director, Acting Judge Sigogo, guest of honor, Minister Ronald Lamola, Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, the Chairperson of BMF Limpopo, Mpho Motsei, Deputy Chairperson, Thulamsinde Rapotu, the sponsor, UIGC, led by the CEO, Dr. John Mudau, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is a great pleasure for the University of Venda to partner with BMF in this auspicious occasion. We are also grateful to host one of our own, Minister Ronald Lamola, to this important event. And it is also worth indicating that our Vice Chancellor and Principal, Dr. Bernard Ntambeleni, would have loved to be part of this important event, but due to other commitments, he couldn't make it. And I would like to express our profound gratitude to host Minister Ronald Lamola in partnership with BMF. And we are all aware that we are hosting this event during these extraordinary circumstances at the time when the world is confronted by COVID-19. So we encourage our Honorable Minister to continue working hard with your fellow Cabinet Minister. Honorable Minister, keep up the good work. And let me pay tribute to our communities for their cooperation and continued patience during this difficult time. So the commitment of our communities is a powerful expression of their obligation to contribute to the advancement of our country during this challenging time. Honorable Minister, it's worth stating that you are an inspiration to our students, and I'm sure we have in our midst the university leadership under SRC President Gift Chauke. Honorable Minister, you are a role model to our students and youth in general. So our students are inspired to achieve their dreams for realizing university education and eventually become the best citizens of the world. It's always said that learning and education is a partnership of mutual commitment to the pursuit of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Therefore, your support is vital if we are to continue producing great future leaders. So the University of Venda for actively providing quality education. The university also seeks to develop competent, well-trained, and morally upright business leaders who will serve in various organizations and communities at large. Since its inception in 1982, the university prides itself in upholding high academic standards, and our academic programs are demand-driven since we involve stakeholders like yourself in the curriculum development to ensure that our programs are geared towards producing graduates who are aware of societal expectation and modern realities. So we encourage BMF family to continue working closely with the university. We recognize that business people and alumni are the heartbeat of any university, since they play a critically important role in advancing the university's vision and mission. We are also committed to work closely with BMF, particularly through the university's strategic thrust, Entrepreneurial University. Program Director, it's worth indicating that the University of Venda is currently in the process of crafting the 2021-2025 strategic plan. And the Entrepreneurial University is one of the strategic thrusts, which is intended to ensure that the university produce graduates who actively participate in the advancement of our economy, who will also contribute in the process of job creation. So we call on BMF to put all its efforts together so as to mobilize all members and drive the University of Venda to greater heights. Finally, Program Director, may I applaud the CEO of UIGC, Dr. John Mudau, and the entire team for sponsoring this event. We look forward to a networking session after dinner, and I am optimistic that we are going to have dinner after formal proceedings. So once again, I would like to thank all the participants for honoring our invitation and for making this occasion a memorable one. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaga. In your talk, when you were touching the issue of dinner, then you remind me of last year where we had a wonderful dinner. And now I'm thinking maybe one of the effects of COVID-19 is to rob us of the right to have beautiful gala dinners like we did last year. But we'll hear from our guest speaker if that also qualifies for that. But allow me, without saying much, to welcome our guest speaker. I should introduce our guest speaker. I will share with you that our guest speaker hails from Mpumalanga in an area called Bushbuck Ridge, but not so long ago, this area was in Limpopo. I do not know what happened, but it's like there were some constitutional amendments after some negotiations, and they took the cream of our people from Limpopo, and then they are now in Mpumalanga. So that's why we do not have a Minister of Justice from Limpopo. Our speaker was born a politician. I say so because at the tender age of 13, he found himself as a member of the ANC Youth League. And when he has to pursue his education after qualifying for university entrance, he chose the University of Venda. That is where he went to do his LLB degree. At the University of Venda, he participated so deeply in the politics of the university to the extent that he was elected the president of the SRC at one stage. He also was the chairperson of SASCO in Limpopo, and he was the member of the ANC Youth League Executive Committee. You'll remember the executive committee, which was led by Julius Malema. He was the leader as well in that executive committee with other leaders like Shivambu and Sindiso Makchacha. And he is a learner, he's a scholarly man, if I should let you know. He prized himself with 2 LLM degrees from the University of Pretoria. He has a number of certificates which he got from different universities, a University of Witwatersrand being one of them. And I must tell you, he's a lawyer who stands for the rights of his client, particularly at the time when he was still practicing. He did not disappoint. He did what was required of him. And it was through him that Black lawyers were able to talk of Black excellence within the legal profession. And it was through him that Black lawyers were able to say, we are equal with all other lawyers. We cannot be regarded as of lower standard because of our color. That was also through his fight within that sport. This is a politician that we know, an honest politician, a person who tells the truth, and it is a person who reasons with you and is accessible by all because he fears nothing, he hides nothing, because he chose this political life because he wanted to upgrade the lives of his people. So we're talking about a husband as well, because we know he's a good husband, he's married, and his family is happy to have him. And most importantly, if I must share with you, he is the Minister of Justice. And I believe you will agree with me that in the history of this country, this is the youngest Minister of Justice in the country. And this talks volume about him. This talks volume about him. He has been, there's trust, a lot of trust on him, and that talks as well to the role young people of our country can play. So time allowing, I'll talk much about this gentleman, but for now, allow me to welcome Honorable Minister Ronald Lamula to come and share with us some few things on the topic of the day, the effects of the declaration of the state of disaster on the protection and enjoyment of human rights. Minister, over to you.
No, thank you, Acting Judge Gogo, and everyone in the platform, the leadership of BMF, led by Mr. Mkomutsi, Dr. Takalan Zaga, and Dr. Mdao from the Investor Vendor, and everyone who is in the platform, including the student leadership that is present here. Indeed, it's an honor for me to be again in the same platform with the BMF in Limpopo, sharing views and ideas of how to build our country, the region itself, and particularly Black management in our various forums in our society, either in sports or in society in general, government, or in the private sector. It has now become a common refrain to state that we are living in a new normal. The novel coronavirus has had a substantial impact on how we organize our lives. Just yesterday, Cabinet has extended the national state of disaster by yet another month. At any given point, the role of a government in a constitutional democracy is to ensure that the rights of citizens are fulfilled. At times, this duty requires the executive, in particular, to create an enabling environment for people to live freely and harmoniously. The state is contested terrain with various ideologies vying for a legitimate interest. As progressive products of a struggle for liberation, our ideological outlook consistently features as the dominant framework of this. It follows in our normal course of work as an executive that every day or everything we do is underpinned by the constitutional mandate for the state to achieve the progressive realization of the Bill of Rights, and in particular, the right to healthcare in this instance. During a global health pandemic, it should not then be a surprise that the primary motive of the government is to make Section 27 of the Bill of Rights highly effective. Section 27(1)(a) of the Constitution states that everyone has the right to have access to healthcare services, including reproductive healthcare. And Section 27(2) states that the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of each of these rights. And Section 27(3) goes further, as it says, no one may be deprived of emergency medical treatment. In other words, Program Director, the Constitution asserts that good health is an essential value of the social and economic life of humans and is an indispensable prerequisite for the poverty reduction, sustained economic growth, and socio-economic development. The COVID-19 pandemic affects all aspects of our lives, social, economic, and spiritual. As a result, government will not be able to fulfill its duties without taking an approach which ensures we collectively confront the pandemic, because a failure to do so will ultimately affect every aspect of society or other fundamental human rights. I'm setting the scene so that members of the Black Management Forum and everyone in this platform can hopefully appreciate the intricacies of the state and the fact that at all material times, every action was taken to advance the Constitution itself as we're dealing with the pandemic. As the executive, we're very mindful of not going the route of the state of emergency. A state of emergency in terms of Section 37 of our Constitution derogates human rights except for 7 rights. While the state of emergency also enables the executive to take actions necessary to safeguard national security, maintain law and order, protect citizens' lives and property, keep essential public service working, concentrate relief resources and direct them to the areas of greatest need, in general to restore normality. It may seem as though it also provides a degree of flexibility necessary to respond to the current pandemic. However, declaring a state of emergency also brings significant risks, particularly those relating to human rights. Emergency powers must therefore be monitored scrupulously and on an ongoing basis. Yet this requires legal certainty and clearly defined parameters regarding what is and is not permissible under a state of emergency. It is against this background that we took the route to declare a national state of disaster and not a state of emergency. The state of disaster gave us sufficient regulatory powers to regulate in a manner that will help us curb the disaster. It also gave us the necessary speed with which we could promulgate regulations. We could respond with agility and agency as the situation required. I think everyone will remember the necessary speed with which we could respond on the question of alcohol, when it was becoming apparent that our hospitals and casual wards can no longer cope with the number of people that were going there because of barriers of accidents and many other unnecessary human-induced accidents that led people into the casual wards. The national state of disaster flows neatly within the framework of Section 36 of our Constitution, which states that for limitation to be lawful in terms of Section 36 of the Constitution, the requirements are the limitation must apply to all people and not just one person or group. The limitation must be reasonable and justifiable in an open and democratic society. The limitation must be based on human dignity, equality, and freedom. Section 36 of the Constitution further specifically provides that when limiting rights, all relevant factors must be taken into account, including the nature of the right, the importance of the purpose of the limitation, the nature and extent of the limitation, the relationship between the limitation and its purpose, and less restrictive means to achieve the purpose. The national state of disaster, through a general law of application, is a public health intervention, and fortunately, we have the 1918 Spanish flu as a reference point. As we're going through some of the references with regards to the 1918 Spanish flu, if you Google, you'll see pictures of people wearing masks. You will also see people or spectators in a soccer match wearing masks. You will also see people or pictures of people washing hands in a tap. So dealing with the pandemic has taught us during that Spanish flu that the basics of washing hands, of sanitizing, of a mask is the best weapon in a fight against any pandemic. But there's also another important factor that the Spanish flu has taught the global community. That important factor is that it is a historical fact that pandemics that depresses an economy, not public health interventions. As we were in the middle of the national state of disaster, there was a growing narrative that our interventions or regulatory interventions are the ones that is depressing the economy. But looking across the globe, it has been proven that the pandemic does not, the regulatory interventions do not depress the economy, but it is the pandemic itself. Even countries like Norway and other countries that may not, like Sweden, that may not have put hardcore any measures of a lockdown like South Africa, their economy are also depressed, or they might be worse than ourselves. So it is not what we have done to intervene that has affected and depressed the economy. And this point can be traversed and be engaged even when we look around the globe. In some of the countries where there was no immediate intervention, like the US and the Great Britain, where they intervened later, it has been proven by now that our early intervention through the lockdown has helped us to save the lives. It has also helped us to prepare, to understand and learn from other countries the effects and how to treat people. And as a result, about 16,000 lives have been saved. Because by the time we were hit by the pandemic, very hard, by mid-June or July, we had already learned lessons of how to treat the disease, of how to manage the disease, and also of how to make relaxed, adjusted, risk-adjusted approach to give the economy space to breathe. And since then, we've continued to relax measures to allow the economy to breathe, but also to allow other social aspects of life to continue in a manner that does not give a huge space for the pandemic to surge. While the risk remains with us, but we are of the view that the risk adjustment method has made South Africans aware, has also made it practically, it is going to be difficult for a new surge to come. But this remains in our hands. If anything, public health intervention such as physical distancing requirements address the fact that economic activity in a pandemic is also reduced in absence of such measures, as households reduce consumptions and labor supply to lower the risk of becoming infected, and firm investments in response to increased uncertainty. This observation became even more justified when we saw the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast JPB gathering from March 9 to 11, 2020 at the Divine Restoration Ministry in Bloemfontein, Free State, which saw the start of the pandemic in the Free State. The spark in India, coronavirus cases linked to the attendance of 3,400 worshippers held at Nazamdin Mosque in New Delhi. And patient 31 in South Korea was in a minor car accident in Daegu, which is a city of about 2 million people. Worried about the health post-accident, she went to the hospital to be checked out, but was not screened for coronavirus. And then she left the hospital. She then attended Sinchu Church twice, which has about 300,000 members. Following this, she had lunch at a local hotel while suffering from a fever. 2 days later, she found out that she had COVID-19. In the coming days, the cases of COVID-19 sparked in the country. Hundreds of patients at one fellow churchgoers fell ill with the virus, leaving medics scrambling to tackle their numbers. Hence, we have learned these lessons because of the quick lockdown and the quick response, which enabled us to learn from these lessons in South Korea and India and other parts of the world like Italy. But we've also benefited from scientific research that has been emerging from time to time in terms of better and good treatment with regard to the COVID-19. Some of these are products that are well available in our country through our pharmaceutical companies, but some of the lessons that we continue to learn is through our participation in the World Health Organization vaccine processes and program that will make us and put us in good stead when a vaccine does become approved by the World Health Organization. We stand a good chance also to participate and share like any other country. Unlike with the SARS flu, which only 1 or 2 countries could benefit at a time. But this one, there is consensus across the globe that that kind of a vaccine must benefit all countries, and they must be allowed to manufacture and produce the vaccine in their countries immediately. This will release the world to do and continue with this life as per normal. But it has been stated by the World Health Organization that that will not happen anytime soon, maybe mid-2021 or later in 2021 or early 2022. So for now, we have to continue with the mitigating measures such as washing of hands and the wearing of masks. When evaluating our decision to limit the manner in which we worship in the midst of a global pandemic, the High Court of South Africa and Gauteng said the following. In South Africa, the right of every citizen is called upon to make sacrifices to their fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution. They are called upon to do so in the name of the greater God, the spirit of Ubuntu, and they are called upon to do so in the ways that impact their lives, their way of life, and their economic security and freedom. Every citizen of this country needs to play his or her part in stemming the tide of what can only be regarded as an insidious and relentless pandemic. I must state that as government, we are very appreciative, particularly of the religious sector, which heeded our call during the Easter weekend to respond and avoid big gatherings. The religious community listened to our engagements, and since then, they've been our wise counsel and good partners in the fight against the COVID-19. It is against this background that government continue to engage with the religious sector and the various economic players in our society, socially, and other players to see how do we continue to relax the regulations for the benefit of the social life, the economy, and also the spiritual lives of all South Africans. The central component of our national disaster process was that it enabled a consultative process, it enabled a transparent process. As we have now observed insofar as the procurement of PPEs, transparency is critical, where it is how government reaches a particular decision or how it procures critical goods and services. If everything is in the open, it's not easy for unscrupulous individuals to steal public resources. And government has been very clear that law enforcement agencies, where it has been found, or where there is suspicion, there must be investigation, and whoever has been found on the wrong side of the law must take its course. There is no question that COVID-19 has forced us to build a new society. Just like John F. Kennedy said some years ago, like it or not, we live in interesting times. There are times of danger and uncertainty, but they are also the most creative of any time in the history of mankind. And everyone here will ultimately be judged, himself on the efforts he has contributed to building a new world and society, and the extent to which his ideals and goals have been shaped in that regard. It is in our hands to continue to forge ahead during these difficult times as a nation. In my mother tongue, West Bogo, we usually say during difficult times when there is limited or is a period of scarce resources, we usually say vana va munhu va tsemelana nhloko ya njiya. I'm not sure how to say it in Venda, but I hope you will have understood. But what I'm trying to say is that these are difficult times where we'll have to share the little that we have, because the fiscal space is very small in our country and even across the globe. As a government, our obligation is to ensure that at least there is some good circulation of resources in terms of finance. Hence, we have also required a loan from the IMF that is aimed to help us to stimulate the economy, so that as we move beyond the COVID, or during the COVID-19 as we move, our path to economic recovery is well lubricated, and it is a space for us to build a new economy which will be inclusive, where Black people are going to play a role. Black professionals in accounting, Black professionals in the legal field, Black professionals in architecture and other platforms. The economy, our intention is that it's going to be recovered through our infrastructure build program, which is going to be massively rolled out. Through this program, it is what will drive our economic recovery. If you may ask us what will be the aspect and what will anchor our economic recovery program after this. But what is clear to all of us is that for us to build an inclusive society, we must first start by building an inclusive economy. Because white privilege thrive in an unequal society where the poor or those that are heavily marginalized are Black. It is a message that is very clear to the government of the day, and it is a message that we carry on a day-to-day with our work to transform and ensure that as we emerge out of this difficulty of the pandemic, we emerge with an inclusive economy and with an inclusive society. Thank you very much, Acting Judge Siko.
Thank you very much. You reminded us of important things when you tell us that out of disaster we get good things. Who will have known that out of the Second World War, Germany will come out to be very strong when all the countries went all out to destroy it, to deal with the war. So they managed to rebuild, and then they became a very powerful society in Europe. So it is out of this pandemic, I agree with you, Minister, that also as the country, we should be able to emerge from this particular aspect. And we should be encouraging our engineers, Honorable Minister, to come up with issues which could be sold internationally, marketed internationally, in order to boost our economy. Because if you see, we are on these platforms now, and this is where when they say one man's death is another man's bread. When we're all dying because of pandemic, the Zooms and the Microsoft Teams, they are killing it. So I think that is what we should be able to look at it and say, we must not all cry and say it is very bad. And we must find a way of making sure that we still come out good. I wanted to answer you, Minister. Then Mpo will tell us what is it that you mentioned in your language, because I'm going to mention it in my language. Then Mpo will then tell us if they have it, because that is very critical. If there's a society without that saying, it's an indictment, because it tells us that when it is very difficult, we don't rely on magnitude of supply. We rely on the smallest things that we have in order to survive as humanity. And that is what is going to take us through. In my language, we say, vana va muthu kana vana va msadzi vatukana thoya nziye. So it's like it's the same person who coined these things for our two tribes. So I think we're coming from it shows that we're one person, we're one people, we're only divided by this and that, but generally we're one people. That's why even our proverbs are the same. This is very important. So having said this, allow me to open this platform now for question and answers. And I believe maybe we might be having questions and answers in order to engage with our Honorable Minister. I'm going to give our people about 30 minutes of engagement with the Minister. And you will have heard the Minister technically using the word disaster as opposed to the word state of emergency. State of disaster versus state of emergency. Maybe those are the things which you'll need to get him to tell us what is the difference. And if it was a state of emergency, was it going to be worse than what we were experiencing? So don't spare any question because you won't find him again. Mpho, I think you will then direct how we deal with the questions, or our organizer will then be able to deal with the questions coming. But I haven't seen any questions so far. Maybe you should start, Mpho, by asking some questions or a question to the minister so that your guests should then know what is it that we expect from them in terms of engagements.
Thank you very much, Acting Judge Tsigogo. Just to answer what you were saying there, I must say in terms of our language, I think it's an African idiom. It's there in all the languages. In our language, they say, so we belong in the same clan. Whether you are Venda or Shangan or Soto, it's the same thing because we're all Africans. Just to come to what you were saying to us, I think one of the important questions is the one that you have just asked, so that we can be able to get the distinction between when we are in a state of emergency, Minister, what will actually happen and when that happens, and because now we are on the state of disaster. Can you be able to distinguish the two so that we can be able to get the clarity on that? And then I will also give the panel, the participant the chance to ask as many questions as they can because we've got 30 minutes here. I would see they've got an option of writing there on the Q&A, and then the facilitator will be able to read, but they can also have an option of raising their hand, and they can be able to ask the questions that they want to ask. So what you need to do now, facilitator, is just to be able to take the questions or just to engage. But what is important at the moment is to acknowledge the president of BMF, Mr. Andy Lenomlala. I think is here, is one of us. So I think we need to acknowledge him as the president. It's just that he was with another engagement before he can join us in this one. So he's also part of us as part of the panelists. So facilitator, I'm giving it to you to get the questions from the participants.
Thank you. In my board, there's still no question, and maybe Minister in the meantime will be answering the question that the chairperson just asked. Then we'll be getting questions.
Yeah, no, thank you, Judge. I thought you will answer that. But I think that on that question, we at the beginning of the state of disaster, we had to look at the two sections. The first one, the state of emergency, and the second one, the national state of disaster. the national state of disaster, they both emanate from the Constitution. But the national state of disaster has an enabling legislation as we speak. And the one with regard to the state of emergency does have an enabling legislation, but it doesn't have regulations. And we realize that the state of emergency has got what it calls that could derogate the rights of citizens when the president becomes a commander and so forth. But we wanted a process which will be consultative, which will be engaging with everyone. Hence, you have seen the president engaging with various role players. That is laid down in the national state of disaster. But also the national state of disaster was also giving us instruments in terms of making quick decisions. For example, there could be loopholes in various legislations and so forth. But the national state of disaster was giving us a platform where we could quickly make regulations that could even cover the loopholes. For example, the banning of alcohol, we could only do it through that platform of the national state of disaster. The banning of alcohol sale, of tobacco sale, and other instruments that we had to use. And the good thing about the national state of disaster is that we could do the regulations as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. And I think I referred to the situation when we then received a health report from health experts and the Department of Health that almost casual wards are reaching their limits. We may not have a space in the casual wards because of human-induced accidents that were happening because related to alcohol across the country, stabbings and so forth, and car accidents, which were now affecting the casual wards. And the health department was saying, if we can leave this for 2 or 3 days, we will not be having space. We are going to reach the maximum capacity. We had to take a quick decision to ban alcohol immediately, and we were enabled by that regulatory framework of the national state of disaster. And it can be extended. So it is a flexible platform that enables us to do what we could not do in a normal environment. I think living society will have seen that some of the things we've done in the past 5 months, we could have done them maybe in 5 years in another different normal environment. Yeah, what's Gogo can add on this one?
No, Minister, no, I'm not going to add. I think you have said it all there. In terms of the difference, you are starting to get some questions. Obviously, arrangements like state of disaster have their own disadvantage, like rise in police and military brutality. To this end, we have a question from Shanduma Dima. The question says, if it appears at the end of the lockdown that police have been more violent in the manner in which they handle arrests and protests, is there a plan or a program from government in order to go around this particular challenge? Do we have a plan to deal with such eventuality, even though it could be remote?
Yeah, no, there is, as you will remember, the recommendations from the Farlam Commissions of Inquiry in terms of violent by law enforcement agencies. They've made clear recommendations which were incorporated to the operating manual of the SAPS as they go and police the country during this period, which was also incorporated into the South African National Defense Force. And you will remember that when there was a murder of Mr. Khoza, or the death of Mr. Koza, the judge Fabricius in the North Gauteng High Court ordered us to read again that those requirements and to the police. And it's what is again being rolled out across the country as we speak now to ensure that the police, they do it, or they do their job in line with what the Constitution prescribes in terms of human dignity, in terms of the powers as prescribed in the Police Act and the Criminal Procedure Act. But sometimes if you come closer to some of the incidents, you also find situations where there's some kind of provocation and disrespect by communities to the law enforcement agencies, which sometimes create unnecessary provocation and upheaval. But we will not want to use that as an excuse. The law enforcement agencies should at all material times act within the confines of the law.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thabo Chilwane will want to know if from this pandemic, we can say these are the key learnings, and as well as to this could be the suggested improvements. I know for myself, the key learning, the biggest key learning that we as the country, we have seen is that we should be able to our health system should be operational, should be efficient, and it should be equipped. I think that is what we, some of us have learned, because when we have challenges like this, we'll all rely on the health facilities. So the other issue that we have learned is to embrace technology. But then, Minister, from political point of view and leadership point of view, you can share with us what could be the greatest learning out of this pandemic.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think you have hit the head on the nail on the 2 points. The technology one, I mean, some of the things that we should have done 5 years ago in terms of technology, it took us very long, including this kind of platforms. They've always been there, but we're all reluctant. I know even lawyers have been reluctant to really use technology. So this is going to leapfrog us to compete with other countries across the globe. I think this is the key lesson. This, the third one, maybe, which I can add, is the speed with which we make decisions. That it has been proven that we will need to have an agile state that is able to make quick decisions. And we will have to see how we do that, because our kind of constitutional democracy, which is heavily consultative, the processes and the administrative laws that are there and so forth, they sometimes make it takes long to make a decision. So we'll need to find a way how do we ensure that our constitution enables us to make quick decisions while we are still consultative and we are still listening to the views of the people. And I think on the fourth one, it's the reality that we need an ethical leadership in our society, because although the issue of corruption is a global phenomenon, you can, in Britain, they are grappling with the same question, the US and various countries, because the nature of an emergency sometimes means that people are under pressure when they take decisions. But it also means that there will be those that they take advantage of the system. So as these kind of things happen, you will need an ethical leadership that while under pressure, they still take ethical decisions.
Thank you very much, Minister. Before I take another question, Mpho, are you having some input on the answers given by the minister on the questions we had so far?
So far about the issue of the input, I don't know, but just to give it to your attention, I would like the president of BMF to engage the minister, because he's got some few questions. They are friends, they know each other. So I think, let me just allow the president of BMF, Mr. Andy Lenomlala, to engage the minister. The president, can you please address the minister?
Yes, I will appreciate that, yes, so that our people should see our president. Thank you. I think he will switch on the video as well.
Hey, thanks, President of BLA first and the acting judge. Comrade Minister, good evening to you as well. No, colleagues, I thought that, yes, good evening to the members and the participants on this platform. No, I thought that, Minister, it's proper and prudent just to join. I'm on the road, but I was meant to be part of this discussion, but I couldn't make it. Unfortunately, I'm attending to a funeral. But there are few things, Minister, that from the BMF point of view, we want to commend the government of President Cyril on, particularly because I was listening to you at the very beginning of your speech. The one thing that is critical to us is that I think we must be grateful, colleagues, for the actions that the government has taken, and that actually averted a catastrophic situation that we could have experienced as South Africans. We know that our immune systems, particularly for HIV positive and other inherent diseases that our people have, if we didn't have a hard lockdown and the preventative measures that the president has made through the legislative process, that was quite swiftly, Minister, I must say, it actually helped us. We could have experienced the Spain, Italy, US, and UK's type of disaster, but successfully so, particularly during the winter season, we managed to escape that. I know that it came at a very high cost from the economic point of view. Many millions of our people have actually lost their jobs. But the good thing is that, unfortunately, we cannot bring people back to life, but we can bring the economy back to life. So we are very, very grateful that at least we would deal with one major disaster. Obviously, we are quite saddened by the 16,000 families and people that have passed on. We extend our condolences to those families, but I think the disaster that was looming was successfully averted. That's one thing. I think one other point, Minister, that you raised, which is critical for me, is the speed in which government had made these decisions. And you have alluded to the fact that the administrative law that our constitutional democracy requires us to undergo when we are making decisions needs to actually be looked at, because I think the coronavirus period, or the COVID period, showed us how important and how successful things can turn out to be when government makes decisions in a very agile and a very efficient and a very shortened period of time. I think if we could adopt some of the approaches that we have used to successfully deal with the COVID, to actually deal with some of the economic challenges that we face, and to deal with some of the social ills that we face in our country, the key things about those would be actually to set up under your ministry, Minister Lamula, is the setting up of specialized corruption courts, and to deal quite efficiently and swiftly with the corruption cases, particularly white-collar crime. I think from both, by the way, private sector and public sector, I think that issue is critical, Minister. It's very critical in the sense that the levels of corruption in our country and the confidence that people have in government, precisely because of the stories that emanates on a daily basis on the corruption matters, it's actually critical that we have a consequence management type of system, because these things of people going to court and being acquitted and come back, have the confidence. I saw with embarrassment, by the way, yesterday, and you know, Minister, I do talk straight, at the sidelines of the court in KZN, where people that are accused of critical crimes and quite colossal corruption acts have confidence to actually say that the state and the justice system is actually just on a witch hunt for them. In an ideal world, at any day when a person, during the days of Scorpion, when a person was arrested, everything was already tied up in terms of evidence and the case itself. So I think those are the key things, Minister, under your leadership that we want to see, where decisive action and particularly the high-profile cases being dealt with so that we can avert and make sure that the rule of law doesn't escape any people, irrespective of the position they hold and the standing they have in society. So I thank you, Minister, for again, which is quite important, always availing yourself. We were together in Limpopo last year when we could travel, and we are together again today. I thought that I must chip in to say hi to you and to also acknowledge that we are very grateful as the BMF that you always give us your ear. Otherwise, thank you, colleagues, and I wish you well in your engagement. I'm still on the road. I'll listen in, but as I travel, sometimes I lose. That's why I now stopped. Sometimes I lose connection, but I'm in the web now. Thank you.
Thank you
Mpo,
very much, President. Thank you very much,
yes.
President. Minister, you can comment. There are 2-3 questions which I'd like you to comment on after you have commented the words of wisdom from the President.
Yeah. No, thank you, Andy, for such comments, and which I think they are eye-opening. I would want to start where you ended when you spoke about the case of the Scorpions. What is becoming increasingly clear, and I will also want to hear from acting Judge Coco, and even if there are lawyers here, accountants in this platform, and maybe forensic investigators and so forth, or those that are in the financial space. What is becoming increasingly clear to us is that corruption is sophisticated and complex. And the fact that you deal with corruption in a kind of a fragmented way with various law enforcement agencies dealing with corruption, it is proving to take too long for our system as the state. Hence, we were now forced during this state of disaster to create what is called the Fusion Center, where all the law enforcement agencies are located. But if you remember, during the times of the Scorpions, it was a prosecutorial-led investigation with all skills under one pot and with one center of command, which is now lacking in our criminal investigating processes, particularly to deal with corruption. And I think this was the misnomer that when we created the Scorpions, we were trying to cure. We are now back to that difficulty because if you look at the international world, this is dealt with in one single agency with all the skills, with the investigators, with the forensics, with the accountants, with everyone under one guidance of those that are at the end. While you still separate the powers of investigators and the prosecutors, but the way that it is done, it enables a speedy and quickly handling of any corruption crime. And that's why now today, in our observation, you'll then have corruption cases that takes too long, 5 to 10 or even more years. And not only corruption cases, even some of them of white-collar crime, when you look at the cases, the extent of, it is becoming clear that these are kind of cases that need some kind of a specialized focus, including the village ones, and there are many others in the JSE and in the private sector, where you will need a kind of a specialized focus, kind of a skill. I think this is a necessary debate that must happen within the PMF and the society in general. What is an effective instrument to fight corruption? And looking at international best practice and even looking at our own unique situation as a country. And with regard to the courts, we are indeed looking at how do we help alleviate the current backlog that is in our special commercial crimes unit. And hence we're going to, in this financial year, establish about 3 courts that will further help that. And one of the courts, that specialized court, will be in Polokwane. So it is also coming to your province to also help us in this backlog that is there in the special commercial crimes court. We looked at whether should we establish the COVID-19 special court, but we realized that the COVID-19 courts is not like the World Cup, that time of the World Cup where you will deal, the World Cup courts will deal with road traffic issues, will deal with smuggling, will deal with all the crimes at the time. It was justifiable to establish such a court, also to enable those that might have been affected to get quick and easy justice within a period of 1 month or 2 months, because we had visitors from across the globe. But now you can't establish just a court only for this COVID-19 corruption, because you will have 2 or 3 or 5 cases in the Limpopo, have one in Rustenburg, and have one in Eastern Cape. So it might not really be fully justifiable, but we're looking at how can we then augment the special commercial crimes court to be the one that helps in terms of that backlog and also in terms of that control. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think, as you have indicated, the Scorpion could still be a model which, as the executive, people should look at and see if we cannot heal our country of the scourge of corruption. And it is as well on us, because if our people on the grassroots continue to believe that crime pays because they do not see consequences, we are not going to be able to lead our country properly. But if we bring back confidence of our people in our judiciary, in our police service agency, and so I think that will work very well. And if people see, I've seen someone suggesting that if you are found guilty of corruption, say of 1 million rand, then the punishment then triples the amount that you receive, then it will be clear that it does not pay. So those are the things which are in discussion. People are talking about that, but Minister, you are quite correct. We need to think of centralization of this whole issue so that we must rid our country of this corruption. We have got a question from Lynette Mutsei. In a question, it's about police or law enforcement agencies who are not playing their part during COVID-19. They look aside when people are committing the offenses. So she will want to know if we have a plan as government, or if we are doing anything about it when they see people drinking when they are not supposed to be drinking, when they see people driving after 10, between 10 and 4 in the morning, when there's no reason why they are driving. So she will want to know if we have a plan as government to curb such. And the other one, which I think it will be easier for you because I think you work with it every day. A participant will want to know as to what is it that government looks at in order to change the level, the alert level of the lockdown from 5 to 4, from 4 to 3. Now we're on 2, and maybe the next question will be, if you can whisper to us are we seeing level 1 anytime soon? I think those are the questions which are coming. And if you do not have that foresight, you will tell us that that will leave it for COCTA and the president and everybody else, for the collective. So those are the questions they want to know.
Yeah, no, that one I leave it to the president.
No, it's fair.
Yeah. On the first one, I think one of the fundamental challenges as a country we have is that we are having a broken society because of where we come from under apartheid, where the families have been broken and our society is that difficult. Because some of the things that we had to deal with in other countries, for example, it does not need the police. When they say at 2 o'clock there must be no one on the streets, at 2 o'clock there will be no one on the streets, and you may not even see one police officer. Although some could be using technology, but in some you may not find that there's no technology. But in our country, people wait for the police to come and take them out of the streets. When they are aware of the message, they are aware of what should be done. Because what we did as government, it was to enable society to be aware, to be self-conscious, because our view is that the disease, we can only fight it, all of us, through when we all act in a collective conscience as a society. We do not have enough police officers to police everyone, but the society should be able to police itself. And I think when members of society do see transgressions and the police are not acting, there could be platforms where such could be reported to deal with, like iPad and the other platforms, the police, the station commissioners of various police officers, to attend to those that are not acting. But as you would see in our risk-adjusted strategy of relaxation, our intention and our move is more towards education and more awareness for people to act on their own without them being policed. I can no longer remember the second question.
The second one, Minister, is it is linked to the one where it was about if we can see when can the level 1 come, but it was saying what is it that as government you take into account in order to change the level?
Okay. The first thing that we take into account is the reduction of the disease, and also the capability of our health infrastructure to cope in case there's a surge. For example, as we speak now, there is available space in case there are more people. There's space in the hospitals and the beds, including in the quarantine facilities. So those are the two factors that we mostly look into. And then we also look into the economic factors, what could also help to reduce and also to stimulate the economy. And does it still justify to keep this closed while it is not functioning and the economy is not working? And we also look at the various issues. For example, on the issue of venues, it has always been a contentious issue of discussion, whether it should be 50 people, whether it should be 50%, whether it should be 100%. But the difficulty with that one, for example, if you say you calculate the venue, some of the venues can take 10,000 people. So if you say 50%, it's 5,000 people. And what does that mean? It means that the chances of the disease being spread and more becomes higher in that kind of an environment. And it was it's a difficult thing to really deal with because there's no hard and fast rule. Sometimes the decision looks irrational. They don't make sense. But when you look at it, that in a venue there are 50 people, it means it has reduced the chances of the disease moving. And even if it is moving, at least we are dealing with 50 people. But then when you go to other economies, you find that it has been opened up a bit. It was also because, for example, in some cases like a casino, say 50, will it be viable? Will it make sense to open that casino and so forth? So there are many of those kind of considerations that were on the table. And as I've said, there was no clear route. It has not been an easy route even for us. And as you sit at home listening and looking at it yourself, sometimes you know that it's a difficult kind of decisions that we were faced with to make. But what also helped us was the guidance from the experts on the various fields, economists, medical, and so forth.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
Yes,
Gogo?
yes,
Can you
Mpho.
please recognize Dr. Mudau, please? He's long has been raising his hand.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for that. I was not seeing him. Dr. Mdau, you are welcome. You can then engage the minister. Mpho, you'll assist me from that end. It's fine.
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you, Judge Sigogo, for giving me this opportunity. And greetings, Minister. I just thought I should ask this question now, because when it's my turn to speak, the Minister may not be available to take any further questions. Minister, I think a lot has been said, and we've witnessed a lot around corruption during this national state of disaster. But there's also a positive that we have noted as a country as well. And this has to do with the service delivery. We have suddenly seen a very interesting and creative ways through which government can deliver certain services. For example, your delivery of water to areas where water has always been a challenge. And I'm just wondering, Minister, from a legal point of view, how would you suggest that we sustain that energy such that decisions are taken quicker and are implemented as soon as the need arises? And I'm saying this because from a business point of view, we are still told even today that government cannot procure, cannot pay immediately. And all of this, we are told there are these PFMAs of this world and so many challenges. And I'm just wondering, from where you sit, what do you think we should be doing going forward, Minister, so that we retain the traction that we have seen during this national state of disaster? Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, John. Minister, you can answer.
Okay, no, thank you. No, I agree with the doctor on this point. And that's why, as I said, is that one of the key lessons was that one of quick decision making. And with regard to the PFMA, we are already dealing with the public procurement bill. And I think we'll have to also incorporate some of the lessons that we have learned during this process of the national state of disaster to that public procurement bill, so that the decisions, the PFMA also enables quick decision making, but not only the PFMA, the entire public sector as a whole. So I think if there could be anything that can be done is for the doctor or anyone who has interest, like the BMF, to make contribution to that public procurement bill, which will then enable us to make the changes that we may deem necessary.
Thank you. There's a question, and I think I'm going to whisper with Mpho about time management, not so far from now, but there are some few questions, and this one is very important to me. It is a creative question, Minister. It's from Abraham. I think it's Abraham Wuri. He says, I think this question is informed by the fact that professionals during corruption are blamed for creating enabling environment for corruption and also for aiding and abating during corruption. So he says, what if cases of corruption or cases which involve professionals are not taken straight to court, but they start with their professional bodies? Let's talk about the IRBA for accountants, and let's talk about LPA for lawyers. So LPC for lawyers. So according to his thinking, if they say Mr. Sigogo, who is a lawyer, has stolen money from wherever, or he was involved in corruption, don't rush this case to court. Take it to the LPC. His peers will then investigate this case, and the people who are of the same knowledge and experience, maybe sometimes better experience than the person involved. And when the body has made its recommendations, the matter can then find its way to court. And I tend to agree to some extent with this person, because with the experience that I have in the law society and as well as in the legal practice council, it is very few people who were found guilty by their peers in their organizations who are taken to court, who go to court and succeed. But if you start in court, they go in court and win, and then it is the end of the day. So I do not know how that can be done, but I think Abraham is coming with some thinking here. And another question related to that is someone raising the issue. Let me recognize this person properly. It's Tabo, worried about the slowness of the wheels of justice. So those are the things that you should deal with. But I think the wheels of justice, you touched on it when you spoke about the centralization of the systems. Of course, someone is asking about the difference between disaster, national disaster, state of national disaster, as well as state of emergency. We've dealt with that one. Paul will tell, is going to, in the manual that he's going to produce from this discussion, will answer those questions, because I believe we're going to share with all our participants the questions and answers that are coming out of this discussion. Thank you, Minister.
I think, yeah, there could be a point, Bosbogo, on this issue of professional bodies first. But I'm not sure how it will then intersect with the criminal justice system, because my observation, although it is not a deliberate, or it is not an outcome which is designed, I think that is the case as we speak now. That is what is happening. Because by their very nature, criminal or corruption or acts of misconduct, they take long in our courts. And the professional bodies, they are able to handle this with a quickly deal with matters. So by the time a criminal court sits, already professional bodies, you find that they already had a finding. And for example, is the former CFO of ESCOM, I think it's Mr. Singh. I saw 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, there was a finding by IRBA on him. And his matters are still at the Zondo Commission, they are still ongoing. So by the time his criminal trial, if it is going to be there, sits, there will be all those kinds of findings. And I think there are others that I have seen, I can't remember who. But we can engage to see how then that becomes by design. Because now it is not by design, it's because of the slowness of the system.
Yes.
And on that one of the slowness of the system, I think, unfortunately, I had another discussion yesterday. It's across the globe. That's how the system is designed. We can't rush it. The only thing that we can do is to enable some kind of an expedited court role where investigations have been concluded and all that at least the wheels must turn quickly. But if the investigations have not been concluded and all that, it becomes difficult for the system to fast track the matters. I think that it needs some kind of a balancing act, because sometimes you can rush it and it becomes self-defeating when it goes to appeals to the various appeal forums that this case was not well handled and all those kind of things. So it has that kind of a balancing act that we have to deal with. The one that deals with the issue of vigilantism and anarchy taking over, I think it's also sometimes because of the design of the system that it takes long, and the society loses hope in the system. But sometimes it has been proven that although the wheels of justice can turn slow, but at the end it does bite, and justice prevails. And I also suspect it could also be coming from what has been happening in the past 2-3 days between EFF and CRICS in the various platforms of economic activity. One of the difficulties that is there, as Boko would know, is a judgment that is making the work of police very difficult. And that the judgment says that, I think it's Malangana judgment of the Constitutional Court, it's Langana or Malangana, if I'm not mistaken. It says that the police cannot now, it has declared unconstitutional the criminalization of a person who has organized a march or an organizer of a protest event. It can no longer be criminal if that happened without notification to the police. But what then does that is that it affects the work of the police, because if people can just wake up anywhere in the country and go to a march, it means the police, they don't have time to prepare. So anyone can wake up in Umlazi and go and disrupt economic activity or go disrupt the church. The police are not aware. And even when the police become aware, they cannot arrest the organizer, because, but if the people just go there and disrupt an economic activity and disappear, and the police, they can't arrest anyone, because who do you then deal with? And if anyone wake up and go to in Shayandima and disrupt the factories there, or wake up to Chakuma, or if people wake up at the same time and cause disruption. So I think this is one of the Concord judgments which has almost rendered the country ungovernable. So it's something which we are dealing with even from our platform to say, but how does, as a state, you respond now? Because what used to happen in the past is that people, when they want to protest, when they want to organize the march and so forth, they will notify the police. It means that the police will be ready, they can plan, and it also makes the march to be well organized and well run and be peaceful. But now there is no one who has got an obligation to make the march peaceful and to be well run. And I think this is a danger to our society going forward. It's not sustainable. There is no mature democracy anywhere in the world where such things are allowed.
We have, as the country, we have sent 400 of our brightest minds to Cape Town. So they are going to come up with solution around problems of that sort.
They won't have a solution to this issue. It has been declared unconstitutional. What solution would they bring?
No, they should see what the Constitutional Court will have said what was wrong with that. Then they will deal with the gap. So we have trust in those men and women who are in Cape Town. We have sent them for that particular reason.
We must also get these inputs from the Black Lawyers Association and those that are acting judges. How does government deal with such kind of judgments?
Yes, I'm going to convey that to my president from that at the end of the BLA to say they must start thinking so that they can assist our government and strike a balance with our judiciary. Thank you very much, Minister. We can't thank you enough. But before that, I will request Dr. Mdau to address us representing UIGC. We know he is the UIGC is our sponsor, and he's going to tell us how we're going to eat our dinner tonight. Is he going to transfer? Are we going to send some accounts so that we can get some dinner? But he will let us know. Thank you, Dr. Mdau. You can talk to us.
Thank you, Acting Judge Sigogo. It's a pleasure to be here. And again, greetings to the Minister and to the entire leadership of the BMF under the leadership of Capable Mpho, and also my colleague, Dr. Zaga there. Yeah, maybe to start at the end, Judge, dinner will be served. The question will be where. I think, Minister, I always get questions when people ask me, what is this UIGC? And I have to explain this over and over again, and I'm going to do this one more time, probably slowly this time. So this is a company owned by the investor vendor. It's wholly owned by the investor vendor. It's a private company. Now, people still ask to say, is this the only type of a company in the Republic? And the answer, Minister, is that no, it is not. All historically white universities, they do have these entities. We are only fortunate to be the first one in the historically black-owned universities. If you go to all the other white institutions, they have this equivalent of UIGC, and they own, they have good balance sheet. Now, we have committed in the first session, Minister, when you visited the investor vendor, we said that we will support this annual event year in, year out, and we are still happy to be part of this event even now. We will continue to do this. And in our view, Acting Judge, is that we think if we need to transform the society, business must come to the party, because we cannot leave it entirely up to government and politicians to do this. And the best way we can do this as business is to come forward and support progressive organizations, such as the BLA and the BMF of this world. So we will continue to do this. Our view as a company is that BMF represents good morals, and they are there for ethical leadership, which we want to subscribe to. And we think equally in your other head, Acting Judge, you will convey the message to the BLA that we are there for them as well, and we would want to support them in all the activities that they're doing, because as a company owned by almost government and which is pro-Black, would want to be seen to be supporting this initiative. Minister, we will continue to support this initiative. We do hope that next year we will have a physical contact, and hope that there will be no this pandemic, and dinner will be served differently. On that note, we want to thank the BMF for always wanting to partner with us, and we want to again declare that we'll continue to support this organization and the minister going forward. Thank you, Acting Judge.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thulamsindo Rapoto, you wield the key. You are going to be the last speaker here. We have, in the presence of the minister, we have reversed protocol, but because we know you are not going to contradict him, so you are going to represent us in our words of thanking all the speakers, including our honorable minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Judge Lutendo Sigoga, our facilitator. Your Excellency, Honorable Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Ronald Lamola, our President, Andile Nomlala, Dr. Mudau, our sponsor, the panelists, our beloved participants to the Limpopo BMF session of the Zoom webinar, greetings to everyone. It is with sincere feeling of gratitude that I would like to conclude this session. First of all, I would like to thank our Honorable Minister for having been able to articulate and address us in a very critical and insightful way. in line with our theme, the effects of the declaration of the state of emergency on the protection and enjoyment of human rights. And I so wished that our honorable minister could have touched the issue of gender-based violence, but I know you will talk to it some days to come. Our honorable minister gave us an insight in terms of the Constitution. He also emphasized that we must uphold the human rights in response to COVID-19. He touched the Bill of Rights, Section 27. He also spoke of the regulatory interventions, which indeed has helped us a lot as a country. We could have seen dust, but we did not. And as for the economy of our country, we cannot blame the interventions because the economy was just going down. And we are so happy that we managed to save lives. And if we are to look into the bigger picture, Minister, we have realized that companies have shown remarkable resilience in the face of the pandemic. For an example, we are seated here having a visual meeting. Before this new normal, we were to come together to drive to places where we may even find ourselves getting involved in some fatal accidents. But today we are able to do these things seated at our own homes. So that is the positive part of the COVID-19 pandemic. I do not want to go deep into what he said, but our president, Andile, has also touched very important and critical issues, which I will not repeat. As we look into the new normal of the world, it seems we need new moral leadership. Actually, it doesn't seem like we need new moral leadership. Leaders who will give hope to our people. And why do we need that? We need such because the tasks ahead of us are demanding. The tasks are such that the pandemic has dealt us a blow at a psychological level and emotionally. But safe to say, if we've got moral, ethical leadership, we will be able to stand up as a society and say the pandemic shall pass. And eventually we will say the economy will rebound. With these few words, I would like to say thank you very much, all of you, until we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing me to lead you, to facilitate in this webinar. It was a pleasure indeed for me to take part in this important topic and to host the minister and all panel members. And indeed, it was eye-opening when we interacted with the questions that you posed to us. And we have seen all of them, and even some of you who sent messages of congratulating the BMF and the organizers for this wonderful work. We have seen you, and they will see your remarks, and indeed, they are going to be motivated by your positive remarks. Thank you very much. I will take it up to here, and my job is finished. I'm going to look to Dr. Mdau as to how do I get my dinner. Thank you very much, because I told my people that I'm going to a meeting, and they know if we go to a meeting and Dr. Mdau is there, there's going to be catering. So I don't know what to do now, because Dr. Mdau is talking of another day.
It must be delivered on a drone.
It must be delivered.
Yes,
it must get a drone. It must be droned home. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mpo. Thank you very much for your leadership and for taking care of us, of our needs, mental needs at this challenging time. Thank you. Thank you very much.